not just one big orgy, fighting the stigma of consensual non-monogamy. You haven't tuned into a different show. This is still the Buck Sexton show. That's a headline from CBS News. We have to put on Producer Mark. We have to have very different music, like, turn down the lights, maybe a little bit of, that wow chicka wow wow. I can't really do that. You know what I mean, though. That kind of music. If it were a show where we would discuss these kinds of lifestyle choices, that. Ooh, there we go. Not just one big orgy, fighting the stigma of consensual non-monogamy. There we go. Yeah. That's look at you on the fly.
It's literally titled cheesy porn music in the system.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there we have that. But this is a real thing, folks. This is a real thing. There's a clear, and you start to see the headlines piling up. You see the news stories being gathered together. There's a clear effort from the forces of the left, the progressive, the social, not even something social justice. I don't even know what you'd call it. Just this alternative left-wing, anti-Judeo-Christian value movement within America. The libs, the liberals, that are trying to make a case, a public case through these different news stories that what I believe is called polyamory. And I have to learn a bit more of the terminology here. I will tell you, this is not my area of. Yes, polyamorous is the individual. So a polyamory or polygamy. Wait, married to more than one person is polygamy. You can't do that. But a relationship, a kind of understanding that you're more or less married, but you're not legally married. You're in a multiple person relationship. That's polyamory. Yeah, so I'm getting the lingo down. I'm getting the terminology down here. And this is where you're in a defined relationship, but it's either non-monogamous entirely or non-monogamous within certain parameters. And wait, do we have some of the CBS? CBS has done a documentary on this now. Please play it. It's coming. The documentary clip will be played in just a moment.
We both, I think, believe that monogamy is something that we take with like a grain of salt. I have a girlfriend. Bridget has a boyfriend.
Yeah, it is a triad monogamous relationship, which sounds kind of weird.
I am shocked at how common consensual non-monogamy is now.
It's not just about sleeping with each other's husbands, our lives are meshed together.
A lot of people think that, when there are three people in a relationship, you're dividing attention. But we see it as we're multiplying the attention.
Many people are trying to create family in different kinds of ways, and I think a lot of people see that as dangerous.
My ex-husband is explicitly concerned. I think he's in that mindset. This is not normal. This is not how it's supposed to be.
Giving somebody an out may give them an excuse to have a permanent out.
We're not here to just wreck the world and burn it down.
And the media, I can tell you, is taking a pretty favorable tone about this whole thing, which really should not be surprising. They are anti-Western civilization commies in the media. That's not an unusual thing, unfortunately. Yeah, anti-Western civ commies. Maybe that's a term we should start to use, because monogamy in the context of a sexual relationship and of course marriage as well, is a building block of our society. I've often talked to you about the left's desire to kick at the load-bearing foundations of our civilization just to see what happens. This is definitely taking a good kick, maybe even taking a swing with a sledgehammer. And they start to talk about this in terms, meaning the media, when they are writing about this. I've seen a few different pieces now on how this is a lifestyle choice where no one's being harmed and it's consenting adults and what's the big deal, and they see, and maybe people that are opposed to this have a bigoted mindset. Now I'm just going to jump back to this for a second here, or rather jump backward in time. I recall during the discussions over whether whether traditional marriage should be left to the states. And of course, then the Supreme Court came in and said, no, everybody has a right to marry. And there was this whole thing about, marriage between one man and one woman was traditional marriage, and then it expanded to same-sex marriage. But we were told by the left when this whole debate was happening, this discussion was happening, that there would never come a time when it couldn't be a marriage is between one man and 10 women, or 10 women and 10 men, or whatever it would be, right? That the one-to-one component of marriage would continue to be understood by all as an important part of that contract and an important part of society. And the laws around marriage are meant for the replication of a certain kind of society. Now you're going to see, I think, efforts for people are going to start to bring up, well, if polyamorousness is okay, or if polyamory is fine, why wouldn't polygamousness be fine? Why should polygamy be outlawed? I don't think we're far from this. I mean, you see how much the Overton window about personal relationships has shifted in just the last 5 years, last 10 years. I mean, and it is always going toward efforts to undermine what we had thought of as traditional building blocks of our society. You've seen marriage turn into something that is, at least legally speaking, increasingly, I guess it's state by state, but in some places it's almost like it's a joke. It's largely an unserious institution. I mean, I was in Vegas not long ago, and sure enough, there was a wedding chapel right next to the slot machines. Now, look, maybe some people just want to go to Vegas because they want to deal with, they don't want to deal with any nonsense and get married quickly. I understand that, but I think some people probably just go in there, get drunk, and get married, or maybe that only happens in The Hangover. But this is disturbing, folks, that the press takes a non-critical look at this. Think about the areas of discourse, the things that the media could report on, where they can't help but always take a side, right? They can't help but suggest that, hate crimes, for example, or hate speech is something that shouldn't really be covered by the First Amendment. And you say to yourself, well, hold on a second. If hate speech doesn't cover the First Amendment, then what does the First Amendment really need to cover? But the press just can't help it. They'll say, this is a situation where our principles need to take a backseat to the need to promote a more harmonious society and diversity and multiculturalism. Okay. When you read through this piece in CBS, look, there is a degree of they're just reporting on this. I understand that, and this phenomenon does seem to be growing, but there's no judgment in this. And there is certainly an effort to make people think, what's the big deal here? What could be the problem? And I think, unfortunately, because so much ground has been ceded in recent years over things like, what is the best circumstance for a child to grow up in? What is the best circumstance? Two parents together, married in a household. That is the best. By all the social science, now people will argue very strenuously over whether the ideal circumstances for a child to have a married mother and a mother and a father married to each other. Same-sex couples would clearly take that as offensive, and people will argue over because now we finally have same-sex marriage legal. There can be more study over what the long-term implications are, and is there a way to even really adjudicate that? But I do know this: broken homes with divorce, homes with an acrimonious relationship between parents who split and separate it's damaging for children. This is just all the studies of this. Every child psychologist, adult psychologist, they'll tell you it's very damaging, has really negative implications. Doesn't mean that people can't overcome this and lead successful and happy lives and have good relations with their parents, of course. But if you're looking for what is ideal and you want at least to have the system be geared toward the replication of the ideal as much as possible, which is two people together for the purposes of raising a child or children. Now, some people can't have kids, and we get into all these specifics. I'm talking about in the aggregate, what makes the most sense. Well, you're going to hear more and more about how maybe in the aggregate what makes the most sense is having even more parents. Maybe you should have 3. Maybe you should have 6. In fact, the question that I would really want to ask at the next Democrat debate is, why can't polygamy be legal? Remember, when you started, there was this big debate when you redefine marriage away from one man and one woman to now it's, the genders are irrelevant. It's just 2 people. Okay, why is it just 2 people? Do Democrats have an answer for that? I mean, I'm posing that the answer, or I'm proposing that the answer is because that has been shown to be the most stable and beneficial circumstance for the raising of children. But what would Democrats say about this? What would Bernie Sanders or Kamala Harris say if asked, why should polygamy be illegal? I'd be very curious. I don't think that they really have an answer. I think that they would say, well, because the law is the law. That's something like that, a total dodge of the issue. I'm telling you, the forces of the left right now, just like we've been saying, look at how fast the debate over transgenderism has moved. Years ago, it was we would never. The left would say this. The activists, the media, we would never suggest that a 10-year-old boy should be using the locker room and bathroom facilities of a 10-year-old girl because of gender dysphoria. We would never do that. Oh, no, then the Obama administration mandated that. And I believe it was South Carolina that was told, you either obey our Department of Education policy or else you lose your federal funding. And now we're at a place where we're supposed to be thankful, as I discussed with you yesterday, if a 7-year-old who's in the middle of talk about a bitter custody dispute between 2 parents in Texas, we're supposed to think, oh, well, it's not that bad if the 7-year-old is put on puberty blockers, which, by the way, would cause sterility, I believe, even if they stop taking the puberty blockers. That is one long-term and possibly permanent thing that would happen. But we're supposed to be, it's only maybe in 3 or 4 years, it'd only be about 10 or 11, maybe 12 when the puberty blockers would actually be taken. So why is everyone getting so upset about this? Oh, is that where things are? Here's a prediction that I could make for you all. You will see, I believe, in relatively short order, a show. You will see some scripted, most likely a comedy. You'll see efforts from Hollywood to make polyamory seem not just an acceptable choice from the more libertarian perspective of we're not the morality police, people can do what they like, it's fine. No, that's different than what I'm saying. You will see a show, and I think soon, where people living a polyamorous lifestyle, meaning that they do not practice, even if they're married, they do not practice sexual monogamy, where it's just as normal as anything else, totally fine, kids are happy, people are laughing about stuff, they're self-aware, it's a little unusual, but this is one of the very powerful ways that the left can dominate cultural discussion through entertainment. You will see this, I believe, through entertainment. There will be a show, and there might already be a show, by the way. I don't know. I mean, I'm not that up on pop culture, but I think you will see a show in short order that is meant to make everyone feel like polyamory is just fine. Polygamy's, they won't get to the polygamy level yet, though. They want to make polyamory seem like these are just consenting adults. What's the problem here? Well, there's a difference between saying that it should be, you can't make some states actually adultery is technically illegal. You're probably not going to be able to police people's sexual morality in this way. But do we have to embrace it? Do we have to think that this is something we can't debate, discuss, and feel like this leads to a lot of hurt? This leads to a lot of disrespect, a lot of jealousy and pain. And what does it mean for the kids that are brought into these situations? Do we have to just take this as another choice that people can make, like they're going into an ice cream store and getting a different flavor? Is that really the way that this is going to be positioned for us? I think the answer is yes, it will be. So get ready for it. You're going to see a show that's, my 3 moms and my 4 dads or something like that. You're going to see a show that's meant to make this whole thing seem like, it's on the cutting edge, man. This is where things are now. It's really sad. We are insisting on unlearning many of the lessons of our history as human beings and as a species. We insist on just forgetting about this stuff and saying, well, let's just try this and let's just put our hand on the burning stove again here and see if this is going to be a problem. And it's a time in this country where I have to say we are increasingly on the defensive about all kinds of traditional morality. In fact, if you were to give me your assessment right now, is traditional Judeo-Christian morality on the upswing or the downswing in America? I think we all know what side of that we would have to say is the case. And here we have yet another. By the way, look, just do a quick search if you want for articles on polyamory in the news. A lot of it going on, trying to make sure that everyone knows they're really not. They're just like you, except they have multiple sex partners even though they're married. Strange.
This was a disgraceful stunt. I'll go further than SE would go, and I'll say that this looked like a Klan group that is assembled outside of a jail trying to get the sheriff to let them in so they could deliver their own justice against somebody who's inside. It's not a good look for our democracy. It's not a good look for the Republican Party. 47 of them apparently are already Republicans are already on these committees that are in this impeachment investigation. Out of 197 total House Republicans, that's a quarter of the entire Republican caucus is already represented, and they're creating these political stunts in order to throw off the attention. They're not focused on the issue of why Trump is being impeached.
Can I just say one thing to you, Keith, respectfully? I think the Klan metaphor was a little strong, and I don't want to get into the whole thing, but earlier this week we were talking about lynching and using that word lightly, and I'm not going to debate the history with it.
I understand. I use it purposely because I felt like there's a visual problem, too, to have these group of almost all white men going in defense of the white man who is already, I think, by most accounts, a racist.
Wow. Even left-wing activist Jake Tapper there is like, hey, could you not refer to the bunch of Republican congressmen who are walking into a part of the Capitol building where Congress is as a Klan group? Pretty disgraceful, pretty ugly stuff to say over at CNN. Do you think that he's disciplined, by the way? You think that what's that guy's name? Boykin? Keith Boykin? Do you think that he gets in any trouble? No. Because he was trashing people supporting Trump. So it doesn't really matter. Say whatever you want. I like that the Jake Tapper, who can be a vicious and surly fellow, was like, well, I think that maybe it's a little strong. Ooh, Jake, you're so brave.
We have whole fact-checking units now that we didn't have 4 years ago, right? We have people devoted to that. I think we've got to continue to do that. I think that pursuit of the truth is what matters.
What's the number one thing that when you see it on our screen, you get ticked off about? What's the biggest thing we do wrong?
What's the biggest thing we do wrong? What is the biggest thing we do wrong? I don't know, Brian. What's the biggest thing we do wrong? You cover
overuse the breaking news.
Oh,
banner.
that's easy. Yeah. Okay.
We're always saying it's breaking news.
Well, that's yes, yeah, we do. Okay, fine. But that's I don't know if that's that important in the big scheme of things, right?
What's the biggest thing we do wrong? What's the one thing? Come on.
You had little mini-me Zucker there talking to Big Zucker, and Big Zucker doesn't have any concerns about what CNN does. The pursuit of the truth is what he says they're doing at CNN. Really, what's happened at CNN, and I don't know, the corporate bosses that I think AT&T or Time Warner or somebody owns CNN. I forget who it is now. They've got no problem with the fact that CNN has been turned into really a platform for the personal feuding of Jeff Zucker with President Donald Trump. That's what has happened. I mean, this is deeply personal to Jeff Zucker that Donald Trump has gone after him so much in public, has undermined the mythology around what a great producer and TV executive Jeff Zucker is. But this was some CNN event yesterday. I just thought it was so funny to have the in-house apologist for all things CNN,
Brad Stelter, was there. I was like, really, I'm just trying to just hold the mirror up to the media and just be real honest about what's going on here.
And to have that and then have the boss sitting there on the stage and have a discussion about journalism and the state of media today. I mean, we just had before, we played a CNN analyst who says it was like a Klan meeting. I mean, this, any slander that you want to use against Trump supporters, anything you say against white male Republicans, this is all going to be considered not a big deal over at CNN because it's an organization of activists. And we've really reached a point where if someone doesn't recognize that, they're just not very smart. It's not an opinion thing anymore. CNN is not an objective news source. And people are going to say, oh, but Buck, what would you say about Fox? I'd say Fox has objective journalists who work there and opinion people. And they call them opinion people. This is not complicated, right? You look at the big names, the primetime hosts at Fox News, they all say they support the president. These are their opinions. You ask Anderson Cooper, Don Lemon, Bro Cuomo, any of them. Wolf Blitzer, if you can keep his attention long enough to get a straight answer from him, what's going on? You ask any of them. Is your job every night to show up and give an oppositional point of view to this administration? Every one of them. Well, first of all, they'd never put themselves in a position. CNN would never let them be in a position where any of them would have to answer that question. But if you did manage to get them to sit down long enough to answer that question, they would all say that no, they don't view themselves as being oppositional to the president. And then they would turn on the extra smug because they'd say, but our real job here is to get the truth. And Trump is waging war on truth. Therefore, it is in our defense of truth that we clash with Trump. Oh, isn't that so convenient? Isn't that such a cute and tidy way of maintaining their journalist creds while being part of the hashtag hate Trump resistance? And in case you were wondering, I mean, I made the comparison to what goes on at Fox. I've never been a Fox employee. I go on Fox sometimes. I have been a CNN employee, which is what's so funny. I've never been a Fox employee. I've never been paid $1 by Fox News. Been paid by CNN for a couple of years. And there's no hesitation whatsoever from Zucker to just trash Fox. And I would note, let's hear it first, and then we'll talk about it a bit. Please play 6.
Hey, they say they have dozens of great journalists.
Yeah, well, you repeat that line a lot, and I think it's one of the mistakes you make in your journalism. And I'm serious about this. Yeah, because I believe that. Listen, are there a handful of really good journalists in that organization? Sure. Is there 1 or 2 really good anchors at that organization? Sure. But that doesn't make it a news organization, and it doesn't make it a journalistic enterprise. Listen, it's I've said before, it's akin to state-run TV. I think it's morphed into conspiracy TV.
State-run TV. The head of a major cable news network is calling one of the other ones state-run TV, conspiracy TV even. Wow, not a lot of journalist camaraderie here. And Zucker can order around the CNN comrades as much as he wants, and they'll do whatever he says, but there's no sense of they're in this with us. Which is why I'd also note that when there have been some people at Fox News in the past who have stood up for CNN journos who are attacking the president and getting involved in those feuds. Look, that's their call. If they want to stick up for their fellow journalists, that's fine. I would just note that I've always said, don't expect it to be reciprocated, though. Don't expect any reciprocation. They're not going to do that for Fox. The one network that manages to, what I always think is so interesting is, what would the conversation be if Fox News did not exist? And what would happen if you asked a bunch of liberals about this? So they really think that, what's the network that's fair to the president? What is the network that an honest, observant human being would say, if Fox News wasn't around, was giving, and some of you are probably saying One America, and that's like nice, but I mean a network that has full cable distribution in 100 million homes and has a budget to compete in news gathering in these other areas, right? I mean, I know people want America. There's some great folks there. I'm not putting it down at all. I'm just saying it's not of the same funding and reach stature as Fox is. And I worked at the Blaze for many years. They do amazing things. The Blaze is a digital organization. It's not really a cable organization. So what would the answer be, though? And what's amazing is that they would be more comfortable, that all these journos, that Zucker himself, I'm sure if you ask, would be more comfortable if there was not a single news outlet in the country that represented the basic political beliefs of half the country. And that half the country that is Republican should be forced to choke down, to stomach the garbage that is peddled by, we were talking about conspiracy theorists. What about Rachel Maddow's show? Crazy conspiracy theory stuff every night. Ooh, and then we're doing this long monologue and this thing about Russia and that thing and this oligarch and that person. And it never goes anywhere. It's just all hocus pocus. It's all just the nonsense magic show. It's true of all these MSNBC shows. Oh, the walls are closing in on Trump any moment now. They consider themselves journalists. They really think that it would be a better, and just look at it from the point of view of the national political discussion. They really think it would be better if there wasn't a single channel that truly represented Donald Trump's, not just point of view, the political party. And I don't even think, there are people, look at Shep Smith just left Fox News. Shep Smith was a liberal, right? This is understood. By the way, Jeff Zucker was saying in an interview this week as well that he might try to hire Shep Smith. So that tells you a lot. But yeah, Shep Smith is a liberal. I know he's a newsman, but he's a liberal. It's very obvious from what upsets him, the way he covers things. It's quite clear what his political inclinations were. And I would just note, who is the pro-Trump conservative that has any visibility in their own show at CNN? The answer is nobody. Who's the pro-Trump conservative who has any visibility in their own show at MSNBC? The answer is nobody. And then don't even get me started on like ABC and CBS and NBC, the big NBC. They don't even make an effort, no pretense that both sides of that perspective would be given. They want to go back to an era of total left-wing information dominance. That's what they would like to do. And the fact that they haven't been able to do it is obviously a source of constant frustration. I mean, I think what Zucker was saying here about Fox is unfair and wrong and really petty, and shows you what kind of person we're dealing with here, a petty and a nasty person. To say that everybody there are plenty, I know liberals who work at Fox. There are plenty of liberals who work at Fox, actually. I know very few conservatives who can work at CNN, and they are conservatives that would never tell a soul at work that they are conservative because they know what the ramifications of that could be. Anyway, this is just it's a moment where you look at the media climate, and it's also why I have no problem being particularly harsh about CNN, because the place has completely lost its mind, and from the top down, they're saying terrible things about other journalists that are unfair. They're maligning other people in their industry. They're doing it because they've got Trump derangement syndrome and everything is about Trump. They've destroyed whatever credibility CNN has. I mean, I'm at a point now where when someone tells me they think CNN is an objective news source, that it's just doing journalism, I think less of their perceptive abilities. I just think that they're not particularly bright. I've reached that point. I don't know what else to say. Or maybe they just don't know because they don't watch much and they see it just in the airport. But for somebody who watches it every night, for somebody who is a committed CNN watcher, to think that what they're getting is not a constant stream of anti-Trump propaganda is an absurdity. I mean, I don't even see it as a alternate viewpoint of the situation. I view it as just kind of crazy. That's where we are.
You have over there Brian Stelter, who's doing whatever he's told to do, and he's got his own show, though, and is really a top journalist.
You know, here's another. Who's the big intellect over at CNN? Who's the really impressive figure? I will say this: Rachel Maddow is very smart. I watched enough, heard enough, read enough. She's a smart lady. Fine. Disagree with her. Think she panders to her audience. Whatever. She's not. She's a smart lady. Who's supposed to be you have a lot of kind of glorified, Saks Fifth Avenue models on TV over at CNN. Not a lot of intellectual firepower over there. I'm just gonna say it. A lot of guys who kind of look the part. I'm a newsman, and you're like, well, okay. So what? It's not an impressive bunch. It's very self-righteous and sanctimonious. Not an impressive bunch at all. All right, I've purged all this CNN out of my system.
I withdrew the United States from the terrible one-sided Paris Climate Accord. Was a total disaster for our country. And I thought when I did that, it would be very tough. And all I do is get applauded for that move so much. It would have been so bad for our country. They would take away our wealth. It was almost as though it was meant to hurt the competitiveness of the United States. So we did away with that one. The Paris Accord would have been a giant transfer of American wealth to foreign nations that are responsible for most of the world's pollution.
The president was right to pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement. I know that people still, I hear that the pundits, and they'll all say, oh my gosh, look at the terrible things he's done. Like, he pulled us out of the Paris Climate Agreement. The agreement that had no enforcement mechanisms whatsoever, where everybody was going to be self-grading on how well they were doing to stay within the bounds of the... It's just a joke, folks. It's ridiculous. It's all just a big PR stunt for the various governments involved, and for some of the governments, an opportunity to try to siphon money away from the developed world to their own economies. I don't think that's a good idea. Never mind paying for the health care of illegal aliens. Not only paying for the health care of people from, the Philippines to Botswana to Argentina to, you name it. No, I'm sorry. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that we should be paying money, really paying out money to the developing world so that they have an excuse to not advance their economies using technologies that are readily available right now, which is what they should be doing, which is what they are going to do. It's what India and China are doing. The whole thing's absurd. I also like, though, when Trump decides that he's going to just double down on all this and be like, we're great. We're the best. We have the best economy. We have the best environment. Right now, we're the best. I got to work on it. I started to sound a little bit like the guy, the teacher from South Park. He's like, okay. Yeah, no, my Trump went off the rails. I know when it does. Okay, we have the best. No, I can't really. You can't just do Trump off the top. I got to work on the Trump. The Elizabeth Warren, I think, has gotten very good for those who care about these things.
And Bernie's always been good. Gotta yell, but I wish you could all see the hand gesture that I'm doing right now, because that's the true Bernie Sanders. You have to have this hand that's wildly flapping around in front of your face and then points at people.
That's how you really get the Bernie Sanders going. But Trump says we're at a great point environmentally. I'll let the president himself say it instead of my version of him saying it. Play clip 1, please.
Our air right now and our water right now is as clean as it's been in decades. Shutting down American producers. The Paris Accord would have been shutting down American producers with excessive regulatory restrictions like you would not believe, while allowing foreign producers to pollute with impunity. They were allowed to do what they were doing. I'm proud that today the United States is among the very cleanest air and drinking water on Earth, anywhere on Earth. And we're going to keep it that way because everybody in this room, you're in the energy business, but you want the same clean water and same clean air that I do, that my family does, your family. So I just want to thank you. It's really incredible, but we're at a very, very good point environmentally right now.
I think what he's saying is true. I'm sure the environment, if you looked at any impact study, the real pollution, which is a concern, clean water, these things are better now than they've been, I'd argue probably than ever before. But no one wants to hear that. Instead, I see this article going around about how offshore wind turbines, not windmills, sorry. That's really old school. Offshore wind turbines could generate enough electricity, CNN has here, to power every home and business on Earth. Ooh, I guess we've solved our green energy needs. Here's the problem. The study says, yeah, we could do that. You'd have to build all the turbines, though. And also, there's no plan for how to get the electricity from the turbine to a grid or to store it. But this is the solution. It's the solution if you don't know what the heck you're talking about. But green energy people, the advocates for it out there you hear in political life, they don't know what they're talking about because it's all nonsense.